We're holding where it says in the Gemara, Mayim kidei loshuv ben esakilar. The first word on the line is cotton. It's about 7-8 lines from the top of the Yamud. So in the Mishnah we learned that the amount of water, the minimum amount of water to be taken out on Shabbos to be chayiv, would be the water that is used for a bandage on an eye. So the Gemara will explain the reason for this shear and not what we would expect would be the shear for water that a person would drink. Isn't water usually made for drinking? So why not a revius like other liquids that the Mishnah mentioned? So the Gemara will go through this, and here the Gemara will tell us the method that Chazal used to determine the minimum amount for a person to be chayiv, and when in all kinds of things when you take them out on Shabbos. Let's see. Amar Abaye. So Abaye said as follows: Mechti, let us see. Kol milse de shchiche v'lo shchiche. When you have something and there's a common use and there's an uncommon use for it. Also Rabbanan basa de shchiche. The Rabbanan follow the more common use, l'kula, and even if that would be more lenient, even if that means that it's a larger size and it's more lenient, still we always follow what's more common. Shchiche u shchiche. If there are two usages of something, both are common. Chachamim will follow the one that's common and will be more l'chumra. It'll be a smaller size. Yayin. Let me just. So the Gemara here will explain. Yayin shtiyasei shchiche. Wine. Drinking wine is obviously common, and refuasai lo shchiche. Using it as a refuah is not common. So therefore Chachamim follow what's more shchiach, and that is the drinking of the wine, and therefore it has to be a revius, and we don't go with a smaller shear that wine could be used for a refuah. Yeah, l'kula. Even if that is l'kula. Chalav achilasa shchicha. Chalav, to drink milk, that's common. Refuasai lo shchicha. To use milk, and this is cow's milk, for a refuah, to use it on a bandage or something like that, is not common. So therefore, also Rabbanan basar chilasai l'kula. Rabbanan follow the larger shear that is a gulp when you drink milk, and not a small amount that might be put on a bandage. Dvash, on the other hand, when it comes to honey, achilasai shchicha, eating honey is common, and refuasai shchicha, and it also is commonly used for a wound, as it was mentioned in the Mishnah. So over here you have two different things that are commonly used with honey. Also Rabbanan basar refuasai l'chumra. So Rabbanan said that we follow the usage for a refuah, which is much smaller amount, and it's more stringent. Since both are common, we go l'chumra. So now the Gemara comes back here to water. Ela mayim. So let's take a look at water. Mechdi, let us see. Shtiyasai shchicha. Drinking water is obviously common. As Rashi here says, water is the most commonly drunk item. Okay? Rufuasai lo shchicha. When it comes to using it on a bandage, it's not as common. My time Rabbanan basar rufuasai l'chumra. So why did the Rabbanan say that the minimum amount of water to be chayiv is what's used in a bandage? That's more strict, and that's not common. Amar Abaye, so Abaye explains, Begli Lashona. Our Mishnah is referring to the people of Golil. As Rashi explains, the people in Golil were poor, and they did not have other things that could be used usually in a bandage for the eyes, and therefore they did use water. For them it was common to use water in the bandage, and therefore it's also considered to be common. It's used commonly for drinking, and it's also used, in their case, for a bandage, and therefore Chachamim will machmer for the smaller amount. Rava answers, we can even say this is talking about any other place. And Kiddush Shmuel, it follows a statement that Shmuel explained, that there's actually a certain advantage of using dafka water in this bandage on the eye. Shmuel said, Kol shakyaini masu. All kinds of liquids could be used to place in a patch on an eye. Umetalali. But most liquids, you'll use them, it'll create some kind of a covering, some kind of a film over the eye from the thickness of the liquid that will leave over some kind of a covering on the eye. Lebar mimaya, besides water, the masu, it could heal the eye. It won't leave this film over the eye, or this covering over the eye, and therefore it's better to use water. It's easier, better to use water. So therefore it's actually common to use water for the bandage over the eye. Going on to the next thing in the Mishnah, V'shar kol mashkin, or the other liquids, b'revius. The minimum amount is a revius. Ton Rabbanim, we learned in Abraisa as follows: dam, blood, v'chol mine mashkin, and other kinds of liquids, b'revius. The minimum amount is a revius. Rab Shimon ben Elazar says, dam, when it comes to blood, kedei likchel be'ayin achas, in order to place it over an eye, one eye. What is this? In what case is this used? Sheken koichelin lebarkis. This is the way they would apply it to a barkis, which is some kind of a protrusion that comes out of an eye. So to heal it, they would apply this blood. Which kind of blood would they apply? Dama the tarnagelis bira, the blood of a wild hen. So in this case, this kind of a blood, this is the minimum amount, much less than a revius, that you would be chayav for if you take it out on Shabbos. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says, dam kedei likchel boy ayin achas. Blood could be used to apply to an eye. And he said a different example, sheken koichelin liyarud, because this blood is used to apply in the eye to heal a liyarud, which is a cataract. Man nihu, which kind of a blood? Dama de krushtina, the blood of a mole. V'simonach, what's the siman of which blood is used to heal which issue in the eye? Gava, the mole which lives amongst people and in places of inhabitants. Legava is a healing for the issue that's inside the eye, the cataract. Bra, lebra, the wild hen which is out in the field is used for the protrusion outside of the eye. The Braisa says weiter, Bamed varam amurim, when is these amounts over here said? B'moitzi, if you carry it out on Shabbos. Avol b'matzniya, but if you store it on kolshu. If you're storing it, then you're chayiv just for whatever it is, even less than this amount. The Gemara will soon explain the lashon of the Braisa here. Kolshu chayiv, even if whatever it is, you would be chayiv. Rab Shimon says, Bamed varam amurim b'matzniya. The amounts that we said over here, even a smaller amount than a revius, that's if you store that amount. So this is following Rab Shimon's opinion in the beginning of the Peirik. Even when we say a certain small amounts, it has to be in addition to that this particular person is storing this amount. But if you're not storing this amount, you just carried out this amount, although it could be used for applying it to the eye less than a revius, but if you carried it out and you didn't specifically store this amount beforehand, you only would be chayiv with a revius. Chachamim would agree to Rab Shimon, as we had in our Mishnah before as well. If you carry out wastewater into the Rishus Harabim, that the minimum amount is a revius. So the Gemara will explain the second half of this Braisa. The Braisa before said, when would he be chayiv with these smaller amounts if he carried out this amount? But if he's storing, then kolshu, then he's chayiv whatever it would be, even smaller than this amount. So the Gemara questions the language of the Braisa. Otu matzniya lav moitzi. Is it not the case that the person that's storing is also then carrying it out? That's what we're talking about over here. The person that should be chayiv for carrying it out. So the language of the Braisa is not clear. Why doesn't it say that we're making a distinction between the maitzi and the person that's also maitzi, but he was also matzniya? What's the pshat in the Braisa here? So the Gemara explains. Omar Abaye, Hocha b'mayaskinon. The chiddush of this Braisa is in the following example. B'talmid she'omalei rabbi. When you have a disciple that his master told him, as Rashi says, we're talking, for example, a blacksmith that has all of his tools and things and all kinds of items all over the place, and he tells a worker, clean up the place for a meal. He went and he cleaned, and he carried something out into the Rishus Harabim, something that's considered to be choshev for anybody. It's large enough, it's significant enough for anybody. chayev ilavei. He would be chayev for carrying that out. Davar she'eina choshev lakoil. If it's something that's not choshev for everybody, iatzne eirabe michayev ilavei. If his master, the blacksmith, the owner there, stored this item and you carried it out, so then you'd be chayev for it. V'iloi loy mechayev. If he did not store it, then you would not be chayev. So the chiddush over here is, as Rashi explains, this follows, the Gemara's interpretation over here is explaining that this follows Rav Shimon ben Elazar's opinion that we learned in the beginning of Daf Ayin Zayin, that says that if one individual stores it, and by him storing it, he's machshav this item, even if someone else comes and is mitzi it, would be chayiv. And the same, that's the pshat over here in this Mishnah. When it says matzniya, this person was matzniya, this person that was matzniya did not carry it out, someone else carried out what the first person was matzniya, he would be chayiv for this minimum amount. That's the chiddush of this braisa here. Then it said further in the braisa, when you carry out wastewater into the Rishus Harabim, the shear, the minimum amount is a revius. What are these wastewaters fit for? To knead clay with it. If that's the case, but Vatanya, we learned in our braisa, tit kedelasis ben pikor. The tit, the minimum amount that's used for clay, is to make the pea of a kor. The kor, a crucible, which is used for melting the silver, for refining the silver, and there's a little hole that's made over there. So the minimum amount that's needed for taking out the tit is for this kor, for the place where they use to refine the silver, which is much less than a revius. Answers the Gemara, loy kasha, no question. Ha de migbal, if it's already kneaded into a clay, so then the amount is this minimum, this small amount that's used for this kor. Ha de loy migbal, before when it said that the amount of water, wastewater, is a revius, because we're talking about before it was kneaded into clay. A person will not go through the hassle of making this clay just for the purpose, for this little tiny hole that they need to make for this core. A person will use the minimum amount of a revius to make this clay for whatever use he needs it. Therefore, in that case, it's only a revius. Zog the Mishnah, a person that carried a rope, the minimum amount is to make a handle for a basket. Gemi, a reed from grass, to make a handle for a sieve or a sifter. Rabbi Yehuda says, to use it to measure the size of a shoe for a child. Niyar, a piece of paper, in order to write on it a receipt, a tax receipt. Right? So as Rashi, we'll see in the Gemara exactly what they wrote on the tax receipt. We'll see. If you carry a tax receipt, chayiv, you'd be chayiv. It's pretty obvious that if you just said that the shear is kesha meichsen, so obviously if you carry this receipt of a tax receipt, you'd be chayiv. Taisus here says, even if this tax receipt wasn't written on a regular piece of paper, it was written on a piece of parchment, and we'll see soon in the Mishnah, a piece of parchment is usually used for something else, but nevertheless, you would be chayiv here. Niyar machuk, a paper which was written on it and it was erased and it's not really fit for use for writing on it. Kedei likroich al tzleiches katana shall plal. So the amount is to cover it on a small flask of balsam oil. Oir kedei lasis kameya, a piece of hide to use it for a kameya, for an amulet. Klaf, a parchment. It's the minimum amount is to use to write the smallest parsha of Kriya Shema, the parsha of Shema Yisrael. Because as Rashi explains, this parchment is a more expensive piece of document. It's not just a regular piece of paper, and therefore it's not used usually for a tax receipt or any other thing. It's used for something like this to write tefillin on it. Amount of ink, the minimum is to write 2 letters. It's used for the eyes, to color the eyes or to heal the eye. It's for one eye. Devek, glue, to put on the top of a board, as the Gemara will explain. Zephes, v'gofris, tar, or sulfur, kedelasis, nekev, to make a hole. It's used to make a hole. Yeah, as Rashi explains, there's the place where they put there's this little keli that they had the mercury in it, and they would have to cover it and then create a hole. So they had to put this tar or sulfur there to be able to create this hole. Shaive, wax, kedeliten al pi nekev. So again, shaive, wax to cover a small hole. Nekev cotton, a small hole. Charsis, broken earthenware, kedelasais, pi kor shal tzerfei zahav, used for the kor, mentioned before, a crucible. Over here in this case, it's used for the refining of gold, also to make a little hole. Rabbi Yehuda says, kedelasais pitput, to make this tripod that was used, that they placed this crucible on it. Subin, the husk of the wheat, or the bran, it's called. Kedeliten al pi kor, amount that's used to place on the top of this kor. Shal tzerfei zav, that where they refine the gold. Sid kedelasset ketanisha bebanis. Amount of lime is what was used to for a small finger of a girl. Rabbi Yehuda kedelases kalkal. Rabbi Yehuda says that this is to make a kalkal. We'll see in the Gemara what that means. It refers to okay, we'll see in the Gemara. Rabbi Nechemya kedei lasud undefi, to use the lime for the hairs of the girl by their temples. Okay, the Gemara will discuss these two things. These two last things we'll see later in the Gemara. Tomorrow's Gemara Mitzvah. Okay, so the Gemara here starts with the first case, Chevel. So it said in the Mishnah that a rope is used to make a handle for a basket. Why would you not be chayiv for a smaller amount of rope, not just for a big basket, but even to use to make a handle for a sifter or a sieve? Answers the Gemara, no, it's not used for this. Kivin the chorik, because the rope is a tougher substance, b'mana lo yavdi inchi. With such kind of keli, people don't use it. It's gonna ruin it. It's only used for a basket. For this, for the sifter, they would use a reed grass that would be perfect for it. Tan Rabbana, we learned in Abraisa hutzin kedelases oizen lasal. Hutzin, which is these twigs or little thorns that grow around a palm tree, is used to make an oizen, a handle, l'sal kfifa mitzris, to this basket, this mitzri basket that's made also from different parts of a palm tree. Sieve, the sieve, which is also grows in a palm tree. I forgot the exact English translation, but also something in a palm tree. Acherim oimrim kedeliten alpi mashper cotton. So acherim say that this is to place it on a small funnel, l'sananas hayayin, used to sift the wine. Revav, the revav, which is Rashi says here, grease, kedei losuch tachas isbegin ketana, in order to smear it under a small little wafer. And this was done then in the oven. Rashi over here explains that they placed it in the oven. In those times, they would attach it to the wall of the oven, so they had to smear it with some oil. It should be able to be removed from the oven easily. The kama shiyura, and how much is that minimum amount? Kisela, the size of a sela. Asks the Gemara, but v'hatanya, we learned in another braisa, kegroigeris, that the size is a groigeris, a dry fig. Answers the Gemara, idi v'idi chat shiyurahu. It's all the same shear. Mochin, the size for cotton, kedelas is kado ketana, to make a small ball of cotton. The kama shiyurei, what's the size of a small ball of cotton? Ke'egos, the size of a walnut. Going on to the next thing in the Mishnah, niyar kedelach lichteval of kesha moichsen, a piece of paper to write on it a tax receipt. Tane was learned in a braisa, kama kesha moichsen, how much, what is written in a tax receipt? Shtei yoisias. 2 letters. If you look at the side of the Gemara, they have the girsa of the Aruch, that it says Shtei Oisius Biksav Yevani. It's 2 letters that are written in Greek letters which are larger than just the regular Lashon Kodesh letters. So that's the kind of letters that were written. They make these two marks. When they gave a tax receipt, they made these two marks that were in Greek or whatever it was, but it was larger than two Lashon Kodesh letters, and that's the minimum size of the tax receipt that is useful and is not allowed to be carried out on Shabbos. Ve'raminu asks a Gemara question we learned in another Braisa. Hamoitzi niyar cholok. You take out a clean piece of paper. Im yesh by kedei lichtov shtei oisius chayev. If there's enough to write on it two regular Hebrew letters, you chayev im lav potter. And if not, you potter. So over here it just says two regular letters, not the letters of that are written in the tax receipt, which are larger letters. Rav Sheshes says, "My shtei oisius." When it says here two letters, shtei oisius shel kesher moichsen. It means these two larger letters. The two larger letters. That's what you chayev for. Rav says a different answer. Shtei oisius didon ubeis achizeh. What this Braisa means, it does mean regular letters, but it means two letters, and then you have to have space to hold on to it. When it came to the tax receipt, as Rashi explains, they would just hold it in their palm. That's how they would hold it, I guess, to show it. But another piece of paper, if you're writing two letters, you have to have a space with to hold on to it. So therefore, the Braisa meant two letters, but two letters and to have a place to hold on to it. So that's the same size as a tax receipt where there's space for two larger letters. Meisve, the Gemara asks a question on the Rav's Pshat. We learned in a Braisa, you carry a paper which was erased on it, words were erased, and you can't write on it anymore in that area where it was erased. A star parua, a star that was paid up already. If in the white part of it, where there's still space to write, if there is, kedei lichtov shtei oisius, you have space to write two letters. Or this is large, the whole thing is large enough to be placed as a cover over a flask of balsam oil, chayiv, then you'd be chayiv. Vim lav, but if not, potter, you would be potter. Now this Braisa here said shtei oisius. So what does shtei oisius mean? What do we see when the Braisa uses this expression of shtei oisius? Bishleim l'Rav Sheshes, according to Rav Sheshes, the Oma that said, "My shtei oisius shel kesher moichsen." When the Braisa says before shtei oisius, it means the two oisius in the size of a kesher moichsen shaper. So over here it means the same thing. When the Braisa says two oisius, it really means two oisius plus a space to be able to hold on to it. That's what the Braisa really means. The Hainu Kesher Moichsen, which would be the same size as the Kesher Moichsen, as a tax receipt that has two larger letters on it. But Hacha, in the case of this Braisa here, Beis Achiza Lo Tzarech, it's not necessary to have a space to hold on to it, because the Braisa was talking about a piece of paper that has on it, part of it was erased, and then there's a white and clear part where you could write. So he doesn't need a Beis Achiza. He could just hold it onto that piece of the part of the paper which was erased. So you see that this whole thing that the Tana of the Braisa would mean to hold on to it is not true. So the Beis Achiza Leitzarech says the Gemara Kashya. This remains a question on Rav's Pshat. Tana Rabbana, we learned in another Braisa, Moitzi Kesher Moichsen. If a person carries a tax receipt on Shabbos, Ad Shaloi Her Olam Moiches Chayev. If it's before you showed it to the tax collector, you would be chayev because you still have use for it to demonstrate that you paid your tax. But once you showed it to the tax collector, potter. So now you have no use of it. It's like you're carrying it out on Shabbos with no use, you potter. Rabbi Yehuda says, Af chayev. Even after you showed it to the tax collector, you still would be chayev nishet tzarech. He actually still has a need for it. So the Gemara explains, my benayu, what is their argument here? Does he have a need or does he not? Amar Rav, so we have a few pshatim here. Or actually, first Amar Abaye says, Ike benayu rihiti muchsa. Sometimes even after he showed it to the tax collector, they send somebody to run after him, and they would have people that would go and check again to see who paid or didn't pay, and therefore he might want to keep it again in case this person that runs to see who paid again might want to see this receipt. So Rabbi Yehuda says he still wants to keep it, he's taking it out for this use. Rava says, Moiches Gadol and Moiches Katan Benayu. The argument over here is when you have the chief tax collector and then the person under him, the smaller, the regular tax collector. So here you showed it already to the chief tax collector, and that's it. You showed it to him. So according to the Tanna Kama, you rely on the fact that once I showed it to the chief, he'll take care of it for me. He'll make a sign that I'm fine, that I can go. And then Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you want to be able to show it to the small tax collector, so there shouldn't be any problems. Rav Ashi says a third pshat, Chad Moiches Ikke Benayu. In a case where there's just one tax collector, there's still an argument here. He wants to use this receipt to show a different tax collector. He wants to just demonstrate how honest he is and show that he pays the tax. So to have a tax receipt is a very good thing, to be able to show how honest he is, that he pays his tax. Tana Rabbana, we learned in another Braisa, Moitzi Shtar Choiv. If you carry in Shabbos, a Shtar Choiv. Actually, Paroi, before it was paid up, Chayiv. Still has a use. Misha Paroi, once it was paid up, Potter, you'd be Potter. Rabbi Yehuda says, Af Misha Paroi, even after it was paid up, Chayiv, you're still going to be Chayiv, if Neshet Tzarech, because you still have a use of this. My Beinayu, what's the basis of their argument? Amar Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef, Aser lishois shtar parua ikke benayu. The argument over here is a lender allowed to keep a paid up shtar, a paid up document in his possession? He can use it to collect from it again. So therefore, one opinion is Rabbanan Savri Aser lishois shtar parua. Once it was used to collect your chayv with it, you have to tear it up, you have to get rid of it. You're not allowed to keep it. And therefore, there's no use of you not even allowed to keep it, and therefore you're parted on Shabbos if you carry it. Rav Yehuda says, Mutter l'shtar parua. He's allowed to hold on to this document even after it was paid, and therefore he's not going to collect with it again, but he could use it. He can use it to cover a flask of as Gemara keeps on saying, a flask of balsam oil, so he still could use it. Abaya says the shtar parua. Everybody would agree that you're not allowed to hold on to a shtar once it's paid up. Here we're talking about a different case. So here's a story with a shtar. Usually by a shtar, you have to verify the validity of the shtar. When a lender brings a shtar to Bezdin to collect the loan, if you can't verify the signatures, then he cannot collect with the shtar. What happens if the borrower comes along and admits and says, yes, this shtar is a good shtar, I borrowed this money. So now the question is, the borrower admitted that this is a shtar that was written, and he borrowed the money. Does he have to further verify that it was not paid up or not? Are we going to have to listen to him to find out if it was paid up or not? That's what their argument is. Okay, as Rashi here explains, this is a Gemara in Ksubis, that the argument over here is, do we say, since the Malva could not verify the shtar independently by bringing in the witnesses that signed it or any other proof, but it's the Leiva himself that is the source of the validity of the shtar, so he's the one that validated the shtar? If he's going to come and say that it was paid up, we're going to have to listen to him. And this is the famous rule that's brought in the Gemara, ha-pesha asar, hu ha-pesha hitir. I'm the one that validated the shtar, now you have to listen to me if I say that it was paid up, and therefore the shtar cannot be used anymore. And therefore, not until you validate it independently will the shtar be able to be used. Whereas another opinion is, just like if the lender would have validated this shtar independently, we would not trust the leiva to say that he paid it up. It's a valid shtar. It's still in the possession of the malva, of the lender, and that's a proof that he did not pay up. Same is in the case where you admitted that the shtar was written and he does not have an independent source. We do not trust you to say that it was paid up, because when you're saying it was paid up, you're speaking against the valid shtar. Once you validated the shtar is now valid. You don't have the right to say that it was paid up. That's what the machlekes here revolves around. Let's see. The Tanna Kama's opinion is, even after the leiva, the borrower, admitted that the shtar was written and he borrowed the money, we would have to rely on him to say that it was not paid. He can come and say, I paid it, and now the shtar has no use. So if it's carried out after he said, I paid it, So there's no chiyuv because the shtar has no use, as the Gemara will explain. Rabbi Yehuda says, once the loive admitted that the shtar was written, now we don't have to listen to him. Even if he comes and says, but I paid it, he's not trusted. And therefore the shtar could be used to collect with it. When the Braisa uses the expression before it was paid up or after it was paid up, what it's talking about is the loive that's claiming I paid or claiming I did not pay. That's what the shtar is really talking about. That's what the Braisa really meant over here. The question is, in other words, the machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanna Kama is, in a case where the loive admits that he didn't pay, so the shtar is certainly still useful for the malva to use to collect with it. In the case where the borrower, the loive, says, I did pay, so in such a case, the question is, does the lender still have any use of the shtar? The Tanna Kama says he does not, because once he claimed that he paid, we have to trust him, and therefore it can't be used. The Rabbi Yehuda says, no, ain't tzarech l'kaima. The shtar has been validated, and now you cannot claim that you paid, and the shtar is still useful to collect with it. That's the basis of this machlekes. Rava says yet another pshat. We can say that everybody agrees that once the loive, the borrower, agreed that the shtar was written, so then the shtar has to be further validated, meaning the loive has the right to claim that he paid. And therefore, once he claims that, the shtar is not useful anymore. But here the question is, there's an argument about writing a receipt. As Rashi brings, this is an argument that's brought in the Gemara Baba Basra and in other places, whether we write a receipt or not. Because if you're going to write a receipt in the case of a borrower and a lender, if the lender is giving a borrower a receipt, the borrower could always say, I'm not interested in holding on to a receipt. A receipt could get lost, a receipt could be eaten up by a rat or by a mouse. I'm not going to have my receipt anymore. I don't want a receipt. So that's the shaila, whether we rely on this, on writing a receipt or not. So over here, that's what the basis of this argument is. Tanna Kama Savar, the Tanna Kama says, Kais v'shoiver, you write a receipt. Malve, the lender, gives the borrower a receipt, and therefore he has no purpose with the shtar that he has now. Once it was paid up, he has no use out of it. He's going to write a receipt for the loive, and that's it. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is, Ein kais v'shoiver, you do not write a receipt. And therefore, the malva, when he has this shtar, he has to go and take it and bring it to the loive, to give it to the loive. He's not going to give him a receipt. He has to return that shtar. So now the loive will be confident that the malva won't collect from him again. Ravashi says yet another pshat. Even after the shtar is paid up and the malva has no more use out of it. But here we're actually talking about a case where the borrower has the shtar. The malva, the lender, gave the shtar back to the borrower. The Braisa was talking about whether the borrower, the argument between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda is whether the borrower has any use of this shtar. So the Gemara says Rabbi Yehuda's opinion was that the use that the borrower has is to go and now show a Bal Chayv Sheni, the Amalek Hazi Gavre de Parano. If he wants to borrow any money again, so he has a document to show that he paid up a loan in a prior situation, so he could prove that he's a trusted person, that he pays up his loans, and therefore he still has a use of holding on to the shtar, and therefore he would be chayiv if he carries it out on Shabbos.